Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're watching or listening to this podcast. I am so happy to be back. I'm so happy to be hosting TrustBuilders again. I've really missed having this conversation with you guys. And I know I took a bit of a longer summer break than I anticipated, but it was well worth it. Not only did I get to take some time off, I got to take my kids to Scotland on a trip of a lifetime, and I got to take my girls and my mom to Norway to see the Northern Lights. But I also spent a lot of time thinking and working through all the changes that are happening right now and really buckling down on what is the next 2 years or the next 5 years going to look like. So I am super thrilled to be sharing with you over the next weeks and months what I came up with, all the things that I put in place. But one thing I am excited to share now is that I actually have started writing a book on how to become the most trusted voice in your space, and why that is such a North Star that we should have in all of our business decisions from now on. So more to come on that in a few weeks' time, over the next few months, but I'm shooting for the book to come out in the spring of 2025. Super excited about it. I can't wait. Now, today's podcast episode, though, is going to be about Impact Live. Impact Live is the conference that was just held in October 14th to 16th in Hartford, Connecticut, and the second conference this year that Impact put on around the topic of the Ask You Answer. Usually it's just a yearly conference, and next year I believe it will only be the one in April in Chicago. So if you're, after listening to this podcast, if you want to get your tickets, I recommend getting them soon because they're right now on an early bird discount, and I'll put the link above. All right, so let's dive in. What is Impact Live as a conference? So Impact Live is much smaller scale conference compared to Inbound, etc. But what is really nice about it is it's around 300 people in a room for 3 days, really working through, like actively working through some problems. So it's much, much more hands-on, and you have a workbook and you work through some of the problems that the person on stage is discussing. It's not just talking at you. Most of the talks are delivered by either Marcus Sheridan or Impact coaches, but there's a whole lot of customers that come on stage, or people who have done the Ask You Answer, or industry thought leaders that also come on stage and share their knowledge, expertise, and their experiences. So for 3 days, we were in this room, and I went to the one in Chicago in April as well. But there was a big difference I felt in this one, because in April, the feeling was, yeah, we have a problem, right? There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of things changing. AI is coming. Is blogging still worth it? There were a lot of questions and a lot of thinking about it. But this conference felt different because there was a real sense of urgency. Just to give you an example, Marcus started off his talk on the first day asking the audience if they had seen a drastic drop in organic search traffic. And almost everyone raised their hand. And then he continued to ask, how about lead generation? Have you seen a significant drop in organic leads, like leads through inbound marketing? Almost everyone raised their hand as well. You could really feel that there was a Houston, we got a problem, we got to solve this because we're having issues in our business. And a sense of urgency of, we're overwhelmed, we can't keep up with this pace of change, and we need to figure out how to do this. So some things in this podcast today that I will share are definitely going to help you if you're feeling the same. First of all, you're not alone. We all are in that. We all feel overwhelmed. We all are trying to make sense of this. But I will share a bunch of very practical things with you that you can put in place. And over the next few weeks, I want to really dive deeper into a lot of these subjects and tease them apart and explore them further so that you can make sense of them. You can use that knowledge and implement it in your own company. All right. So having said that, there's one thing I have to send ahead. And one thing is really important to understand, because all the other things that I'm going to share have to be viewed in that context. Okay? We have to understand that our buyers today are vetting us to death. When it used to be like when you walk in a shop, you know what you want to buy, but you don't have that knowledge and you have to depend on a salesperson to give you that knowledge, we know those times are long gone. But what most people don't realize is the extent. We as buyers are vetting the companies and the products or the services or whoever we're going to work with to death. And we're going to do 80% of that purchase decision or that buyer's journey by ourselves, using the material available without contacting the salesperson. Now, the scary thing is most marketers would agree with that. But if you ask your sales team how much of that buyer's journey they cover, they would probably say somewhere between 40 to 60%, right? When in reality, it's only 20% or even less, because that number isn't going to go down. So we really have to make sure that we don't say, oh, that's a marketing job or that's a sales. We have to be aligned 100% that marketing takes those 80%, sales then takes over the last 20%. But this journey has to be one consistent, smooth journey. And we have to be 100% aligned between marketing, sales, and management. I just want to make sure that this is the thing I send ahead, view everything else through that filter. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to make really clear, and I've already hinted at that, is you cannot build your house on Google anymore. So this whole easy, oh, we're going to do some SEO, we're going to write some blogs, we're going to go for these keywords, forget about it. Unless you're in a super niche where that still shows success, you really need to deprioritize that ASAP. Because if you're building your house on Google, it's very much built on sand. And you know what? Even if you are in that niche, look for the big five, and I'll link an article to what the big five is here, but try to cover those, but really focus on the other things I'm going to be talking about as well. Because it's like building the Tower of Pisa on sand. At some point, it will start to slip. Okay? Now, the flip side of that is that you can't overly rely on lead generation by creating guides and white papers and ebooks and that kind of stuff, things that HubSpot and other companies have been telling us for the last decade and that we've been successfully doing for the last decade. That playbook doesn't work anymore. People want access to the information. They want to see that you're transparent. There was definitely a place for those ebooks, but now it's been so flooded and it's so easy to use AI to create ebooks with a click of a button that the value of those things it's basically zero. Okay? So unless it's something that you have your own IP and you develop by yourself and it's not replaceable through AI, that might still work if that really solves a problem that your customers are facing. But other than that, don't overly rely on it. It's a good thing to have, and you should continue to have those things as educational material. But consider maybe to ungate more content and have it out there available just to educate, to cover those 80%. Because people don't want to fill out a form if they're not closer to that 80%. Okay? All right, and then we talked about the uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. So if you're feeling the same thing, just know that everyone feels this. However, having a lot of uncertainty and not knowing what the next 6 months will look like, because honestly, I was very surprised between April and now how much things have changed. So it definitely will change to next April as well, and at an exponential rate. We have to have something that sort of guides us, right? What helps us make the right marketing decisions. And with attribution becoming a lot harder, and with our marketing world moving into a zero-click world, we have to make sure that we have a good filter to make decisions. And for me, this will always be, does it induce more trust with our buyers? If the answer is yes, go for it. If the answer is no, it's probably a waste of time. I want you to view trust as your North Star that you're going for, becoming the most trusted voice in your space, being the most trusted teacher out there, because that is the only thing. If you strip everything else around away, all the noise, all the social, all the tactics, that will actually help get you somewhere. That will help you make sales, increase your revenue, increase profitability because you increase your customer retention. All these things, if you just focus on building more trust. How do you become that voice of trust? There's 4 pillars that we can keep in mind. You have to be willing to talk about the things that others aren't willing to talk about. And that's your big 5, for example. So pricing, versus and comparisons, potential problems, reviews, and who's the best of. Those are your big 5. I'll link to an article that you can, if you're not familiar with the concept, that you can look at. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is be willing to show things that others aren't willing to show. What is your process like? What is it like working with you? If you are a modular house company, give a factory tour, show how things are built. If you are a software company, show the inside of your software, show how you, I'm not saying show the code, but show people how you solve problems using your software. I have one client who completely opened up their software as an online demo that you can just go and log in and you can explore their whole software without having to sign up. That's a great example of showing what others aren't willing to show, because a lot of people make you jump through a lot of hoops to even have a trial. All right, third one is you have to be willing to sell in ways that others aren't willing to sell. And that means being educative, being an advisor, not having cold outreach and a general pitch for everyone, but really taking the time to super personalize and then assign a piece of content, be the one who educates. Also, be the one who is willing to step away and say, you know what, you're not a good fit for us. And that's okay, because we want to make sure we're the right fit for you if you go with us. But if you're not, that's okay too. And then there's the 4th pillar of how to become the most trusted voice in your space is to be more human than others are willing to be. With that might sound funny at first, but if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of people are now using AI to create blog posts. Great, we get more blog posts out there, but you can tell pretty quickly that it's written by AI. But being imperfect, having stumbly blocks in this podcast is full of them, having some imperfections in your videos, in your podcasts, in your sentence structure, in your punctuation, in general the content that you put out. I'm not saying put out grammar mistakes, etc., but make it sound human. Show that you're a human and develop your own IP. That's really massively important. Really focus on what is your expertise, what do you do different, what is the value that you bring to your customers, and show that, make that really transparent. All right, So that is the number one thing that we do know in this uncertainty, right? You have to build more trust, rely on the 4 pillars of how to build more trust, and I will go into that in a lot more detail over the coming weeks. The second thing is disruption. And it goes along with that trust, because if you think about it, a lot of industries have done things in a certain way for a long time. And a lot of times that isn't necessarily good for the customer. For example, one thing that comes to mind is if you buy an HVAC unit, for example, the warranty, the 2-year warranty that you have on it starts on the day it was manufactured, not on the day you buy it. So that's not great for the customer, but you've been doing it for this long and it's good for us as vendors. So we're not going to touch that because we are going to protect ourselves. Now, if you are thinking about this from a customer perspective and you really want to align with what's best for your customer, again, building trust, then you could go out and say, you know what? I'm going to change that. I'm going to do this thing differently, even though I'm going to make everyone else upset, but it helps the customer and that's why I'm going to do it. Okay, so that is disruption, and it's really important because it is so much harder to get found nowadays. So we have to find ways to get noticed. I want you to think about disruptive content in a sense that content or industry norms or industry standards that align with the customer, that make people stop in their tracks and say, who is this person? Who is this company? Because they are solving a problem for the customer. They are doing something good for us. And they're willing to make the industry upset in order to do something good for us. Okay? A lot of things we're going to explore in the next few weeks with that. But really think about that. What do you do? What is making you angry at the moment in your industry that you think needs to be changed? All right, so that's number 2. Number 3 is video first strategy. We need to stop thinking, and this is me having written blog articles for the last 15 years and passionately because I really think through with writing, but we need to think like a media company and we need to think video first. So how can we, whenever we see something or whenever we think of something that we could show, our next thought should be, how can we show this? How can we make this transparent to the customer? And if you're not convinced that video is a good strategy to go for, 82% of the internet traffic is video based. Now think about how much, and be honest with yourself, how much video is on your website right now. Most companies don't get past the 10%. And it really needs every product pillar page, every service page, the About Us page, they should all have video. In addition to videos on your website, you need to think YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, LinkedIn video, any type of video on social. Sending one-on-one video as a sales tool can be extremely helpful because it's an amazing thing where people meet you before they have the first meeting. They've heard your voice, they've seen your face, and they feel like they know you before they come into that sales conversation. So definitely use one-on-one video in your sales. And 4th is signals. So what do I mean by signals? We used to, in the good old days, go for keywords in SEO, or we used to write blog posts to, when people search for a certain word, that we would come up as a answer to that question. Now, people are using AI like ChatGPT. They have used it as a creation engine, but now they more and more are using generative AI as a recommendation engine. Meaning they go and say, who is the best They Ask You Answer coach? Or what is the best contractor for HVAC and plumbing in Richmond, Virginia? Or you get the point. So they're asking AI these questions rather than going to Google, or they're using generative AI search within Google. And they're asking for a recommendation. So now, if we don't show up, that's a problem, right? Because we're more and more going to that AI search. Google, organic, normal search isn't coming back. So we need to be really good in sending signals to the AI to rank us as a trustworthy and recommendable company or person. Now, I don't want to be misunderstood. I always struggled with keyword stuffing, that people do that. Anything that can be gamed. And that is not what I'm talking about. If you're trying to game the algorithm, that's not going to work long term. It's going to get you in trouble and you shouldn't do it. What I'm saying is create signals that reflect your real life expertise and knowledge and experience so that AI can pick up on it. But you do need to be good at sending signals. How can you send signals? So we'll explore that in detail in the next few weeks, but there's a lot of signals come from social. So you got to be active on social. And I'm not talking LinkedIn company page, but have your employees, if you're a B2B technology company, your salespeople and your management should be building personal brands and thought leadership on LinkedIn. If you are more a B2C company, be in Facebook in terms of videos. Instagram Reels is an enormously great way, TikTok. There's so many ways to get signals out there. YouTube Shorts is going to become a major way to find and discover new companies and new brands. So definitely invest in YouTube Shorts. Your website, like putting in a large language model, like a chat bot that has a knowledge base on your website and that acts as like a generative AI search on your website. I talked about this before, but stuff like that is going to be massively important in the next year or so. So those are just 3 things out of many things you can do, but you get the gist of it. You get the idea. That's number 4, signals. Number 5, something that you should absolutely do in this uncertain world, is self-service tools. Now, self-service tools, if you think about that, we want to do 80% of the buyer's journey by ourselves. There's a lot of decisions we have to make, a lot of hoops we have to jump through in our research to go to the next stage, right? If I want to buy, let's say I'm going to take up running. I'm not a runner, but let's just go with that. And I want to research running shoes. I have to probably say, okay, so where am I running, like asphalt or in the forest? Or am I going to be just in a gym practicing going back and forth? Every runner is going to laugh at me right now. But running shoes for men and women are different. Then you have probably different, the type of foot that you have, etc., etc. So there's a lot of product knowledge that I have to gain in order to make the best decision for me. Self-service tools are amazing because they help me make that decision. There is a self-selection tool that I could be using for running shoes to help me understand what would be the best running shoes for me. In terms of modular housing or anything that you can configure, like cars or whatever, a product configurator would be amazing because you have an enormous amount of options. And with a product configurator, you can put these things together, see what the cost is at the end, but you also learn the pros and cons of each of these options, and you learn how to make a decision what is right and what is not right for you as you're going through that process. FDomes has an amazing product configurator. I'm going to link it here. I love that thing because it really makes you understand. You can be in that dome. It's like a geodesic dome, and you can be in the dome and walk around and understand, but you can change the options and it will update. Just try it out. It's amazing. Self-pricing. So people really don't want to talk to a salesperson, and they certainly don't want to fill out a request a quote when they press on a pricing page. But astonishingly, only 10% of B2B companies currently have a proper pricing page on their website. And that's not acceptable, because if we as buyers come to a website, one of the first things that we want to see is, how much is it going to cost? Can I afford it? Is it going to be a waste of time, me looking at all those features and then it's out of my budget? And the thing is, we know what the company is charging. We know they know. So if we know they know, but they're not sharing it with us and they're making us join a sales call, etc., we feel a high level of distrust because they're hiding something from us, right? They're not sharing it with us. So we have to have a pricing page on our website. But what helps even more, if you have a lot of options or if you have a complicated pricing model, is to just put a pricing calculator or self-pricing tools on your website where I can just enter a few questions or answer a few questions and you give me a price estimate. I understand that's an estimate. I understand I still have to get a proper quote from someone, or maybe you can actually nail it down and make a quote right there, but it has to be self-driven. Now, self-scheduling is an easy one. If I want to book an appointment, let's say with a financial advisor or with someone, I need to have the ability to schedule that. Again, if you're a software company, you want to have on your demo page, instead of having a whole fill out this demo page and then we call you and we schedule, just have a calendar and let people pick their spot right then and there. Cuts through a lot. Like, there's nothing that kills a sales process faster than losing momentum. And by putting a self-scheduling tool on your demo page, you are gaining momentum and your likelihood to close is much greater. Additionally, there was this really cool case study that was mentioned. Opus Partners in New Zealand, they're a financial advisory company. They did something amazing where they actually let people choose their financial advisor that they want to work with. So they say, choose your financial advisor, and then you can schedule the first meeting with them. And a lot of those financial advisors had a video about themselves, so you actually get to meet them, a bio page, etc. They saw a double in booking just by doing that. Absolutely amazing. All right, and the last one is self-assessment. So, for example, if you have a decision to make that you can't make on your own because you're lacking that background knowledge, right? For example, can I repair my HVAC unit, or do I need to replace it? You're usually not a plumber or an HVAC specialist. You only do this once. That is self-assessment tool would be a great one because you can really make that decision very fast. Or is business coaching for me? Am I going to get something out of it? Would be a great self-assessment tool. Now, that is the fifth one, so self-assessment tools. The last one, I'm just going to hammer it home here because it's so important, is you got to be more human. Anything you can do to show your people, to show you're not perfect, to just have people experience that you are a human in this AI-driven world is going to become so important. All right, so that was a quick rundown of the most important findings of Impact Plus. I look forward to the next few weeks to dive into these points deeper, but I hope you find this useful, and I would really love to hear your comments. Where are you at? Are you losing traffic? Are you struggling to get enough leads? I would love to hear it. Until next time, my name is Hannah Eisenberg. I am the host of TrustBuilders. And remember, ultimately in business, everything comes down to trust.